Some days it is hard getting on camera when you look this rough. Hi friends. It is a couple days later than I would have liked between uploads, but listen, sometimes when you're a grown-up, there are things that take priority, like taxes. So the week leading up to our first rehearsal for the next show that I'm currently in, which is Guys and Dolls. If you were in the Lower Mainland in the spring summer this year, you should definitely come check us out. But because I knew that if I didn't get my taxes done before we started, they just weren't getting done. So I had to put my big girl pants on and go and do that before doing this. But today is my day off, and in this new era of the channel, on our days off, we film for YouTube. I'm gonna do my best to maintain uploads while I am working, which in the past has been a real struggle for me, but because now the studio is in my home, I really don't have any good excuse. So we're gonna give it a go because I love YouTube and I love you all. Thank you to everyone who watched last week's video. If you haven't seen it yet, I will link it up here. And in that video, I floated the idea of showcasing people who have recreated looks from my channel. And I wasn't expecting such an immediate response, but oh my gosh, a follower of mine, she sends me this bombshell selfie of the most recent video. It couldn't have been more than a couple of hours. First of all, that was fast. Second of all, holy shit. You look so good. Honestly, the blend is fire. Her name is Nora, and this is her handle on Instagram if you want to go follow them. I was just so wowed. The blend, the skill level is just like perfection. Thank you for sending that to me, and thank you for allowing me to share it on my platform. And then I got another DM from another subscriber of mine. They go by T Lollyrod on Instagram. They're just getting into some music right now as well, so that's pretty cool. But when they perform, they put on a full beat. And this recreation is actually from quite a while ago on the channel, like I think a couple years back. It was one of my Halloween casual looks, which I adore still to this day. So I will throw that video up here if you want to take a look at it. And I love this recreation. It's such a great look on them. Dark, smoky, spooky, definitely fits their vibe. And it's really hard executing a black smoky eye, but listen, they pulled it off. This is my new favorite thing. I love being sent recreations and I love sharing them here. So if you ever want to do that, please DM me and I will absolutely shout you out in the next video. With your permission and consent, of course. There's some really talented people watching this channel, just FYI, which is just all the more reason why I believe my subscribers to be the best. This intro is already going to be way too long, so I'm just going to get right into it. Folks, you've been waiting for this for quite some time. You've been very patient and I appreciate it. Today is finally the day. We are starting a palette potential with the Cosmic Brushes Serenity palette. So why don't you just get comfy and let's dive in to the first look of several. Oh, it's been a long time coming. Let's get started. So for those of you who are brand new here, who have never even heard the word combination palette potential escape my lips, it is really the only long-running series that I have on my channel, really the only series that ever stuck, and it has not changed format since its inception. I never saw in-depth reviews of palettes on YouTube, at least not from bigger content creators. So they would show a palette once, maybe twice, and then move on, because for a content creator of that size, they're probably getting way too much PR to warrant spending more than one video on any palette. And as a fledgling makeup content creator, I obviously had a significantly smaller collection than the creators who were being sent makeup every single day of the week. So I was trying to kill two birds with one stone, really. I was trying to create content for the people that wanted more in-depth review of a single palette, and stretching out a palette through multiple videos was just economic sense. But the side effect was that people really enjoyed that. They enjoyed the in-depth process. They enjoyed seeing every single shade used in a palette. So even after my makeup collection inevitably expanded, and then once in a while even receiving my own PR, I still continued the series because my subscribers were still asking for those in-depth reviews. So in short, too late, I'm going to continue doing this series until people stop asking for it. Nowadays, I'm more choosy as to which palettes I feel deserve a full series. And over the years, I've come up with a bit of an arbitrary criteria to evaluate which palettes would be best for this treatment. One of the criteria being that it has to have a lot of shades. The more shades, the more interesting the exploration can be. Criteria number two is that it has to have at least more than one color story, which is why usually smaller palettes get allotted to maybe a 2 looks 1 palette video or just a first impressions. All that to say, it has been a minute since I've actually found found a palette that I felt met all of these criteria. Mega palettes like that were way more popular, say 5 years ago, which makes me think that palette potential might just become extinct eventually because those kind of palettes are going the way of the dinosaur. We are in an era of wanting more curated color stories, which I also prefer. I feel like a lot of giant palettes are incredibly overwhelming and I sometimes find myself at a loss of what to do with them. But that's why this series, for me, and maybe for you, is helpful in unlocking that creativity. Needless to say, this palette I feel is one that I have put off working with for this exact reason. There's a lot going on here, so let's just open it up and take a look. Okay, are you with me in thinking that this is a bit of an overwhelming palette? Because there's things in here that are kind of similar to each other. Like every time I think I know what combination I'm gonna go with, my eye kind of flits up to one of the other shades that is very similar, but just has a slightly different undertone. I don't know why this palette trips me up in this particular way, but every time I look at it, I just feel like there's too many ways in which to split my focus, and thusly I just kind of get overwhelmed and close it again. What I do know is that it is absolutely gorgeous. There are 14 mattes and 6 shimmers. I believe this is a great ratio, and as much as I want to dive into those greens immediately, I'm gonna try and pivot from that and do something that I wouldn't normally gravitate to. And so if we take away the greens, the things that are most interesting me right now are the blues, which is odd. Blue is definitely not my favorite color. Plus there are some gorgeous shimmers in here that I think will go really well with the blues. So I think today's plan is just to do a big old blue smoky eye. My smoky eye inspiration for the day is from a creator on Instagram called Frankie's Dandelion Crown. And ironically, a few months ago, they posted this green smoky eye. When I tell you that I had a visceral reaction to this look, but I really like the emphasis on the inner third with a lot of depth built up here. And I think just for variety's sake, I want to do something that maybe pulls down on the outer corner just a little bit more. Lately, these days, I've been starting without my base completed already because there are a few of you in the comments who are requesting that I just go through this part of my routine more frequently for the camera. Also, the other reason I'm starting barefaced today is because I wanted to play with a couple of the items that I purchased at the most recent Sephora sale. Turns out I've managed to hold on to my rouge status just in time. One of these is a product that has been sitting in my loves list for ages, and the other one was an impulse buy because one of the Welsh twins told me to. Full disclosure, I have been using this for the last couple of days, but this is the Glow Recipe Watermelon Glow Niacinamide Hue Drops. They make a non-tinted version of this, but recently they came out with one that is tinted with a little bit of bronze. It's basically tinted skincare, which is something that is appealing to me as a person who doesn't like wearing a whole lot of makeup at work, especially when we're in rehearsal, especially when we are going to be sweating and doing choreography for a part of the day. I don't want to put on makeup in the morning just to sweat it all off. So this appealed to me. This looks absolutely crazy when you first pump it out, and it actually spooked me so much that I ended up mixing it with my SPF the first time I used it. But honestly, it's incredibly subtle. It almost does not pick up. It shears out quite beautifully. As you can see, it is nowhere near that dark once you apply it. It kind of just brings life back into your face. Also using this on your little shoulders. I think it's purely just from watching Drag Race and seeing Michelle Visage just oiled to the hilt. But I haven't used it underneath a full face of makeup yet, so I'm curious to see how it works with a wee bit of foundation. Also, this particular serum foundation from Rituel to Fille is pretty pale when it starts out. It does oxidize a little bit, but in the spring summer when I inevitably expose my skin to a lot more sun, even wearing SPF 50 every single day, which I do, my skin will still shift in tone. Undetectable to the human eye, but if I did use this foundation shade in the summertime, you would be able to tell. So having the hue drops would probably actually help with that. If you're a Sephora member, comment down below on what you got from the sale, or did you skip the sale altogether this year, which I definitely would not fault anyone for, FYI, because consumerism is rampant. Still forever wondering where the best place for this stupid mirror is. And because I started rehearsals just a few days ago, I was trying to concoct a no makeup routine that made me feel confident at work, but didn't interfere with my work. A lot of the time I don't wear makeup at all at rehearsal, but I don't know. I just like had this urge with this show in particular, especially on the first week, to feel cute. I'm playing a very ultra hyper feminine role, which is not something I'm often cast in these days, which being being someone who styles themselves quite androgynously doesn't often get marked for those types of hyper femme roles. I think a lot of people have the misconception that that is by choice, but as any performer would know, the choice in what you get cast in is rarely anything to do with your own wants. I think some people conflate my personal style with my range as a performer. Those two things are not inextricably linked, but I think a lot of people automatically just assume that those are the only roles that I want because of my personal style. I guess for some people in casting, it's just harder for them to see past how I look. And this is more prevalent in film and television, but like when you have a type, you have a type, and that is all you are. Because there's no point in transforming you when they could just find someone who looks exactly like the thing that they want. But in theater, it's just a little different, you know? Like, I feel like there is much more room for transformation and playing with your range as far as like gender and age and style goes. And of course, this is very dependent on the material. If there's a certain element of an outward appearance that is pertinent to the plot and the narrative of a piece, then that is a no-go. That is a non-starter. But as far as say like shifting the gender role, in theater there's a lot of room for that kind of reinterpretation because it puts a new lens on something. It gives a piece a new perspective. Or it's just, you know, giving a middle finger to societal norms and saying there aren't enough roles for women, so why don't we just start taking them for men? Which is a category of performer I seem to have fallen into, I think, purely based on my outward appearance. I don't know why, but putting someone who has an androgynous style into a traditionally male identifying role is just a lot more palatable for a lot of people, maybe to a theater patron who is of an older generation. I also think fat phobia is also kind of wrapped up in this conversation. Hoo boy, I digress. Anyway, I've often struggled to be seen by creatives in this industry as a performer with the potential of playing a role that is traditionally hyper ultra feminine. She says while pulling out the pinkest blush she's ever seen in her life. This is the Makeup by Mario Soft Pop Plumping Blush Veil. This has been in my wish list for months. So curious about this formula. So sheer. Oh my god, I was not expecting that. It is just like a balmy texture. This actually would be great for rehearsal. So what I'm trying to get at is when the director of this show, first of all, even accepted my submission for this role and then ended up casting me in this role, was really gratifying and validating for me as a performer. Finally not being overlooked for the girly girl in the show brought me a lot of, brought me a lot of gender euphoria, you know? I don't often feel dysphoric. The only time I ever really feel gender dysphoria is when my gender identity is being perceived and judged by somebody else. And not just like any old person, but a person who actually has a direct effect on the trajectory of your career. I guess all this to say is that I'm really grateful for the chance to showcase my range as a performer. And as much as I enjoy stealing roles from men, playing dress up and feeling pretty and wearing makeup and high heels is part of the reason why I wanted to become a performer in the first place. Also, this blush is actually really stunning. It's really soft in color. Like, there's so much glow to it, but it is quite subtle. Though I feel like in this day and age, there's a lot to be said about what even is femininity and what even is masculinity at this point. Gender presentation is so vast and ever-changing that it almost feels antiquated to even classify things as masculine or feminine traits. Like, I'm talking about these things purely in the most traditional sense, especially how it pertains to a classic piece like Guys and Dolls. Gosh, I'm really rambling at this point, but my point being is that as performers, I think we have way more range between masculine and feminine than what a director is often willing to allow or even entertain as an idea. And our personal style and aesthetic doesn't have to reflect who we want to represent on stage. A large part of the beauty of theater as an art form is the magic of transformation. The role I was playing the last time I was on that stage could not be farther from this one. Like Miss Adelaide versus a giant man-eating plant from outer space. Listen, she's giving range. And as a person who relies on this for the majority of their income, being able to showcase that kind of range is a privilege. Wow, that was quite the ramble I just went on. Whew. But hey, that conversation got us through the majority of my base, so I just hope that it was coherent in any conceivable way. Okay, let's just throw on some bronzer and call it a day. Still using the combination of the two lightest shades in the Melt Sculpt stack. I just want to give an apology to my future editing self for putting her through that. I hope she can forgive me, although I am not making it very easy for her. Gonna throw in a bit more of the Plumping blush veil on top of all this. I've just been on the hunt for like the perfect cotton candy confectionery pink cream blush. So for the last couple of rehearsals, I've been working on various degrees of makeup that will make me look like I got sleep, will give me a little bit of color in the cheeks, and won't feel too heavy and cakey. So I've been rummaging around in my collection and resurrected something I almost completely forgot about. OG subscribers will remember this one. This is the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Edit Palette in Ghost. So I'm gonna throw these two, the brightening shade and the setting shade, just kind of everywhere. And none of the powders in this palette are flat matte. All of them have a hint of ambient light in them, hence the name. With just a little bit of skincare and a tiny bit of concealer coverage, they do so much heavy lifting. Okay, I think we're in a good place for now. I'm gonna take a break off camera, go throw on some eyebrows, and when we get back, we will finally dive into this bad boy right here. Hang tight and hold on to your butts. All right, folks, I have T-minus 2.5 hours until Daniel gets home from work, so pray for me. I would love to be done before he gets home so I could at least be a human for all of 5 hours before I have to go to sleep and go back to work tomorrow morning. This is what happens when you only get one day off a week. Before we start, I'm just gonna throw in a little bit of a body highlight because I feel like it. When you got the full decolletage out on display, you might as well. And for being ever so patient and waiting for this series to materialize, y'all deserve a very sensual mirror peel. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. So the plan is blue smoky eye. So I'm gonna live in here for sure. I wanna use these two shades and then a little bit of this as well. And I don't really vibe with Echo today. I don't really wanna use that as a transition. I'm much more interested in this pale lavender right now. And because Ether has both a blue and a purple shift, I think that will kind of bind this whole color story together. And as always, throwing on a little bit of eyeshadow primer before we start. Someone in the comments did challenge me to reverse the order of which I put my eyeshadows on, meaning that instead of applying my shadows going from lightest to darkest, I should flip it and try to build a look starting with the darkest shade and then blending out to the lightest from there. But for today, I think I'm just going to stay within my comfort zone and start with Awake. Right off the bat, a lot of kick up in the pan and a lot picking up on the brush. So let's hope this doesn't get away from us today. I'm gonna start by just placing that on the outer edge. Even though that shade is pulling quite lavender in the pan, that is showing up quite blue on the lid, like very Cinderella ball gown blue. I think this was the correct move for a transition tone today. Very pastel, very bright in tone, but still showing up. Just takes a couple of layers. It is giving me Meet Me at Midnight vibes, the palette from Lois Cosmetics. That's actually one that I did use for a palette potential series, so if you haven't seen that particular one yet, I will link it up here. That palette definitely lived within this specific color family, although that palette is wildly different from this one. It's really interesting how the overall vibe of a palette can really come down to just a handful of shade choices. Moving on, let's jump into this little blue here called River. I'm gonna start being a titch more precise with where I place these shades now that we're starting to build a shape. Wow, this one's really pigmented. This shade particularly is really overtaking quite quickly. I'm being very careful with this one now because I can already tell that if I am even an ounce less careful, this shade will get away from me. These are gorgeous colors, but I am not having the most fun trying to blend these out. Listen, okay, you do not have to say you told me so. I'm going to tell it to myself. You can tell that it's grabbing onto certain areas, and on camera it's pulling a lot cooler in tone than in person. In person, this shade has actually got a bit more yellow to it. I don't think I'm gonna close off that inner third on the lower lash line entirely. With a little hand holding, the blend's not terrible. And a good rule of thumb, as usual, is to have a clean brush on hand. Now with even more trepidation, let's dive into Mood. Oh, this one is dusty as heck. Okay, here we go. Using gentle tapping motions. There is a fallout situation, let it be known. It is a stunning shade though. On camera, that's pretty sick. You know, for being such a dark shade and for being so messy, this is actually a lot easier to manipulate than the previous shade. That gradient there is really satisfying. Okay, I think I've reached a place where I am satisfied with the blend, although it is not exactly perfect. But the carnage in the pan. Let's move on to some shimmers and see if we can bring some levity back to the situation. And I'm gonna do something that I haven't done in a dog's age and cut a crease. Gonna take some Glimmer Grasp here on the back of my hand, take a flat brush, load it up, kind of vaguely map out where I want this to go. Just to start, I'm gonna use my finger because I think I'll get the best color payoff with that. So let's go into Ether. Oh, that's gonna be so gorgeous. Then I'm gonna take a tiny brush just to get a bit more precision on the inside. Look at that shift, isn't that gorgeous? I'm just gonna throw it underneath a little bit. All right, I'm really looking forward to this one. Let's get into Twilight. I'm actually less enthused about that than I thought I would be, but they transition nicely into each other. I'm gonna lay down a little bit of Mood, blend that out a bit. And then I'm gonna take a little bit more Mood and graze the inside edge a bit more, just to give it a bit more definition. It doesn't matter how much blending I do. I know that the second that I watch this video on my actual television, when it gets published, it's just gonna look patchy as f. I will say this is really, really pretty. Not arguing with that. I'm gonna throw some black liner into the waterline. And then to blend that out, I think I'm gonna take the black. Not to like add so much black into the look, just to kind of blend the liner and the eyeshadow together. And I think I'm just gonna do it on the bottom and forego the top. I think the last thing I wanna do is add a little pop of brightness. And I have a feeling this is one of the shades we're probably going to reuse throughout the series. This is the shade Opal. And I think I just wanna use that on the inner corner. Oh yeah, you can always count on this kind of translucent, iridescent, shifty shade to just kind of work as a highlight for more than one color story. Ooh, yeah, that's really pretty. I think this is a good place to leave it for now. I feel safe. I feel secure. So I'm going to go off camera, throw on some lashes, and when we return, we will complete the rest of this look. We're back. We are wearing my favorite lashes, possibly of all time. They are the best. They are discontinued, and I am still mad about it. These are the Pure X Raw Beauty Christie 3D lashes in the style Lovely. And the fact that they are not permanent still irks me to this very day. I'm gonna beef up this blush ever so slightly. There's a couple shades in here that I like to combine to create a nice little ballet slipper pink. These are from Unearthly Cosmetics. And then just a touch more highlight as well. I'm gonna take this one by Rare Beauty. This is in the shade Enlighten. I love using highlight with a bigger brush, like a tulip brush. The application is just so soft. Let's spray her down before we wrap this one up. I think this is the gloss I want to go with today. This is Emma from Unearthly Cosmetics. Neutral pink, but it's got a bit of a blue reflect in it, so I think it will tie this together. Let's start with lining the lips. This is the OG, the one and only, Maybelline Almond Rose. I love this lip liner. It is the OG for a reason. All right, and let's give Emma a whirl. The blue kind of actually picks up on camera. Oh yeah. I'm gonna call it there, folks. That is a wrap on the first video in this new Cosmic Brushes Serenity Palette Potential series. And I gotta say, I was not expecting this one to be such a roller coaster. A lot of ups and downs with these mattes. And so far, especially the deepest tones are just kicking up a storm in this palette. It's been a while since I've seen an eyeshadow formula with this much kick up in the pan, but usually that is an indication of the eyeshadow being easy to blend because it is less tightly packed. And in the end, after a lot of back and forth, I was able to create a pretty decent blend, but I was having quite a lot of trouble with River here, which was that mid-tone blue we used today. That commenter telling me to go from darkest to lightest is now laughing. And you know what? I don't blame them. Listen, maybe this is one of those formulas that just works better in reverse. And I plan on testing that theory out in the next installment of the series. I mean, I managed to make it work, but it did require a lot of hand holding, especially when I have done very similar looks in the past with other palettes that have not given me this amount of grief and given me very similar results. I would definitely sooner reach for those guys than this one. But this is just my first impression. I'm not going to discount the entire palette just yet. But so far, she is not the most user-friendly. Shimmers, however, absolutely stunning, gorgeous. This one especially, Ether, that is a dream. Twilight was less impressive, but definitely still beautiful, just, you know, not shocking in any sort of way. This palette definitely has not sold me yet. And because I am so on the fence with this palette, I'm deeply curious to know your thoughts. Do you own anything from Cosmic Brushes? Have you worked with this eyeshadow formula before? If you do own the Serenity palette, did you have a similar experience to me? And if you own multiple palettes from this brand, I would love to know if the formula and the experience is the same across the board. In any case, I'm really curious to know where this palette's going to take me and if my first impression is going to be the same as my last one. But folks, we shall find that out together. So I hope you all are excited for the return of Palette Potential. And again, if you do decide to recreate this look, please either tag me on Instagram or send it to me in my DMs. I would love to see it. And with your permission, I would love to share it here. But for today, that is it from me. I am going to love you and leave you. But before I do, please let me rattle off the spiel to you. Here are the many ways that you can help out my channel. You can give this video a big thumbs up. You can comment down below what you thought of everything. You can subscribe. Any and all engagement with this video is crucial to its success in the algorithm. So if you have a few spare seconds, please engage with this video. You can follow me on Instagram. I will leave that right there. Oh, and also if any of you picked up that perfume from the last video I did, I know at least one person picked this up after watching my video, but if you picked up Juliet or you already own Juliet and you were looking for another scent to layer it with, this guy right here picked this up at the Sephora sale. I was not disappointed. All the Sol de Janeiro scents are very similar, but this one in particular amplifies all the gourmand scents in Juliet. And this one also plays well with like the floral jasmine notes because this one also has notes of violet and orchid. Also, the sandalwood in this pairs really well with the amber in Juliet. Sol de Janeiro 59. Thank me later. And with that, folks, please stay safe, wash your hands, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!